Welcome to my Facebook Live about 7 intention keys to overcome your own fear. Now, I recognize, and the reason I did this was because we're all experiencing an unprecedented amount of fear. You know, we're worried about climate change. We're worried about cost of living. It's now in crisis. We're worried about inflation. We're worried about the war in Ukraine. We're worried about our politicians who seem to not know what to do. We're worried about polarization and violence, and you name it. It's all part of hysteria right now. But we also have our own fears and self-sabotage that prevent us from doing what we want to do in the world, from achieving what we want to be, from living the life we were meant to lead. And so that's why I wanted to invite you to this free event to talk about what to do and how to overcome your fear using intention. Because I've been working with intention for more than 20 years. I've written about it. I've done 40 studies about it with my intention experiments. I've worked with thousands of Power of 8 groups, and I've helped thousands of people use intention to heal their lives, to heal each other, to heal the world. So there are a number of very good techniques that can help you. And the first thing I want to do, I want to share some slides with you, and I'm also going to be available for questions through this hour and a bit, and I'll be available for questions about my new Intention Essentials course too, which is coming up September 24th. It's a level 1 course. It's all about how to use intention correctly right from the start. And you wouldn't believe how many people don't know how to do that. Don't know how to marshal their thoughts to a good effect. So I want to start by sharing my screen and showing you a few slides that should help you figure out how to use intention properly. So, and particularly in a crisis. So let me just click onto this and bring this up here and hide this little bit and show you it here. Okay, so our 7 intention keys. First, I want to ask you some questions. What are your biggest roadblocks, do you think, to manifesting your life, to overcoming your fear? So I want you to write these down right now, but I'll give you some prompts, okay? Most people say I can't do things because of lots of reasons, but these are the usuals. I have to be perfect before I do it. I'm not ready yet. I just can't. It's too hard. I'm not skilled enough. I'm not good at whatever. Money, relationships, health, whatever. People convince themselves, they tell themselves that story. They're the hero or the heroine, and they're not good at something. Or I'm going to fail. Or there's more. I need more training or whatever. Some people spend a lifetime training. It's scary and it's overwhelming. My family doesn't want me to do this. I'm bored by or worried about the hurdles to success. I want it instantly. Or it's typical. Nothing good happens to me. That's all part of that story that we have written inside our heads. Intention doesn't work anyway. And my favorite one, life is crap. You know, life is crap and then you die. So I want you to imagine something else. I want you to imagine what you would do if your life depended on not failing, because that's the mindset you need to overcome fear. And to tell you about how to do that, I want to tell you the story of Alex Honnold. Now, Alex Honnold is a rock climber, but not just any old rock climber. This is one of the places he climbed, the northwest face of Half Dome, Yosemite, in Yosemite Park. Now, as you can see, that little red line, which was his route, is straight up a sheer cliff. But he wasn't that interested in stopping there. He made it, but he wasn't really satisfied. So he takes on an even worse one, the Killer Rock, El Capitan in Yosemite. It is 3,000 feet straight up. Now, he doesn't just climb. Alex Honnold climbs without ropes, without hooks, without anything, without nails, without anything. He climbs with a bag of chalk to use for his hands and himself. That's it. So if Alex fails, he dies. So I want you to watch a little video that he created and went on. He gave a talk and he was on TED. This is his TED talk about what happened with the first climb with Half Dome.
I'd succeeded in the solo, and it was celebrated as a big first in climbing. Some friends later made a film about it. But I was unsatisfied. I was disappointed in my performance because I knew that I'd gotten away with something. I didn't want to be a lucky climber. I wanted to be a great climber. I actually took the next year or so off from free soloing because I knew that I shouldn't make a habit of relying on luck. But even though I wasn't soloing very much, I'd already started to think about El Cap. It was always in the back of my mind as the obvious crown jewel of solos. It's the most striking wall in the world. Each year for the next 7 years, I'd think, this is the year that I'm going to solo El Cap. And then I would drive in Yosemite, look up at the wall, and think, no frickin' way. It's too big and too scary. But eventually I came to accept that I wanted to test myself against El Cap. It represented true mastery. But I needed it to feel different. I didn't want to get away with anything or barely squeak by. This time I wanted to do it right. The thing that makes El Cap so intimidating is the sheer scale of the wall. Most climbers take 3 to 5 days to ascend the 3,000 feet of vertical granite. The idea of setting out up a wall of that size with nothing but shoes and a chalk bag seemed impossible. 3,000 feet of climbing represents thousands of distinct hand and foot movements, which is a lot to remember. Many of the moves I knew through sheer repetition. I'd climbed El Cap maybe 50 times over the previous decade with a rope. But this photo shows my preferred method of rehearsing the moves. I'm on the summit, about to rappel down the face with over 1,000 feet of rope to spend the day practicing by myself. Once I found sequences that felt secure and repeatable, I had to memorize them. I had to make sure that they were so deeply ingrained within me that there was no possibility of error. I didn't want to be up on the wall wondering if I was going the right way or using the best holds. I needed everything to feel automatic. Climbing with a rope is a largely physical effort. You just have to be strong enough to hold on and make the movements upward. But free soloing plays out more in the mind. The physical effort is largely the same. Your body is still climbing the same wall. But staying calm and performing at your best when you know that any mistake could mean death requires a certain kind of mindset. That's not supposed to be funny, but it is. I work to cultivate that mindset through visualization, which basically just means imagining the entire experience of soloing the wall. Partially that was to help me remember all the holds, but mostly visualization was about feeling the texture of each hold in my hand and imagining the sensation of my leg reaching out and placing my foot just so. I'd imagine it all like a choreographed dance thousands of feet up. The most difficult part of the whole route was called the boulder problem. It was about 2,000 feet off the ground and consisted of the hardest physical moves on the whole route. Long pulls between poor handholds with very small, slippery feet. This is what I mean by a poor handhold. An edge smaller than the width of a pencil, but facing downward, that I had to press up into with my thumb. But that wasn't even the hardest part. The crux culminated in a karate kick with my left foot over to the inside of an adjacent corner, a maneuver that required a high degree of precision and flexibility. Enough so that I'd been doing a nightly stretching routine for a full year ahead of time to make sure that I could comfortably make the reach with my leg. As I practiced the moves, my visualization turned to the emotional component of a potential solo. Basically, what if I got up there and it was too scary? What if I was too tired? What if I couldn't quite make the kick? I had to consider every possibility while I was safely on the ground, so that when the time came and I was actually making the moves without a rope, there was no room for doubt to creep in. Doubt is the precursor to fear, and I knew that I couldn't experience my perfect moment if I was afraid. I had to visualize and rehearse enough to remove all doubt. But beyond that, I also visualized how it would feel if it never seemed doable. What if, after so much work, I was afraid to try? What if I was wasting my time and I would never feel comfortable in such an exposed position? There were no easy answers, but LCAP meant enough to me that I would put in the work and find out. Some of my preparations were more mundane. This is a photo of my friend Conrad Anchor climbing up the bottom of LCAP with an empty backpack. We spent the day climbing together to a specific crack in the middle of the wall that was choked with loose rocks. They made that section of climbing difficult and potentially dangerous because any misstep might knock a loose rock to the ground and kill a passing climber or hiker. So, we carefully removed the rocks, loaded them into the pack, and rappelled back down. Take a second to imagine how ridiculous it feels to climb 1,500 feet up a wall just to fill a backpack full of rocks. It's never that easy to carry a pack full of rocks around. It's even harder on the side of a cliff. It may have felt silly, but it still had to get done. I needed everything to feel perfect if I was ever going to climb the route without a rope. After 2 seasons of working specifically toward a potential free solo of LCAP, I finally finished all my preparations. I knew every handhold and foothold on the whole route, and I knew exactly what to do. Basically, I was ready. It was time to solo LCAP. On June 3rd, 2017, I woke up early, ate my usual breakfast of muesli and fruit, and made it to the base of the wall before sunrise. I felt confident as I looked up the wall, and felt even better as I started climbing. About 500 feet up, I reached a slab very similar to the one that had given me so much trouble on Half Dome. But this time was different. I scouted every option, including hundreds of feet of wall to either side, and I knew exactly what to do and how to do it. I had no doubts, I just climbed right through. Even the difficult and strenuous sections passed by with ease. I was perfectly executing my routine. I rested for a moment below the boulder problem, and then climbed it just as I had practiced so many times with the rope on. My foot shot across to the wall on the left without hesitation, and I knew that I'd done it. Climbing Half Dome had been a big goal, and I did it, but I didn't get what I really wanted. I didn't achieve mastery. I was hesitant and afraid, and it wasn't the experience that I wanted. But LCAP was different. With 600 feet to go, I felt like the mountain was offering me a victory lap. I climbed with a smooth precision and enjoyed the sounds of the birds swooping around the cliff. It all felt like a celebration. And then I reached the summit after 3 hours and 56 minutes of glorious climbing. It was the climb that I wanted, and it felt like mastery. Thank you.
So that has been considered and called one of the greatest athletic feats of any time ever. Imagine that. Imagine climbing up with just your hands and feet on the side of sheer rock. Now, that's using intention to achieve your goal when fear of failure is just not an option. But look at some of the things that he did, and they are very similar to what I teach people about intention and what to do about it. And number one is taking incremental steps. You notice he thought about it bit by bit by bit for 4 years. He imagined every step he was going to take. And he did that because he wanted to broaden his comfort zone. As he says, broaden your comfort zone until something isn't scary anymore. So he broke down the goal into tiny component steps. He figured out the steps he needed to achieving the goal, the baby steps, as I like to call them. And he figured out ahead of time any hurdles he was going to overcome and going to need to overcome, and worked out a strategy of how to do that. So, as I always tell people, plan the path from beginning to end. Take it baby steps at a time, map it step by step. So the second one was his preparation. So he broke it all out into tiny little manageable chunks, but he wasn't doing anything yet other than stretching. But what he did was mentally prepare until he knew the route by heart. And this can work in your life too. You have to learn all the moves you need to make, study the actual physical places where your goal is going to take place, but practice it all in your head. And that's the key thing. And that's what he did too. It is called mental rehearsal. Alex Honnold carried out constant mental rehearsal of the route, step by step. And by route, I mean anything you have to do to get to your goal. Most people, when they approach a goal, just sort of say, I want to be rich, or I want to have this job, I want to be a manager, or whatever it is. They don't work out, well, what does it require that I do to get there? And how do I rehearse that? So he was doing things like, what is it going to be like to look down into the abyss while I put my foot on this tiny ledge? He worked out that kind of specificity. And of course, the real key here is that it avoids experiencing anything new. The whole reason this works is very simple. Your brain is a marvel. It's an absolute marvel. It's also a little bit dumb because it cannot distinguish between an action and a thought. Many, many studies of athletes have found that the very same neurons, identical neurons, fire when you are carrying out an action or performing some sort of sporting technique and thinking about carrying out that action. If you look at all of the great athletes, they all use mental rehearsal. Tracy Calkin, pictured here, one of the best swimmers the US has ever produced, used mental rehearsal. She mapped her route in her head ahead of time to be part of an Olympic relay race in 1984, thought about it, went through it, move by move in her head, and also practiced diving in the water 0.02 of a second earlier than her opponents. And she got her gold, went home, and her team went home with their gold. Same thing with Rocky Blair. Now, this Vietnam vet, believe it or not, was injured and kept working on mental rehearsal to return to football. And he led the Pittsburgh Steelers to victory by practicing mental rehearsal, practicing all the possible moves and passes, all the possible runs in his head when he was having his breakfast, when he was getting up in the morning, when he was sitting on the bench, constantly going over it in his head until nothing was a surprise. Now, once you have choreographed each move, you practice it, you do trial runs, you imagine your equivalent of a free blast in your head and practice it. So imagining the whole thing, and Alex talked about visualization. The more visual you can be, the better. And by visual, I don't mean just in your eyes and just imagining it visually. I can mean hear it, see it, smell it, taste it, feel it. And that means not only breaking it into tiny segments, but particularly focusing on mentally rehearsing the tough parts. If you have doubt and images of yourself falling, block them out and replace them. That's the marvel of our mind too. We have 70,000 thoughts a day. You can change those thoughts. You don't have to dwell on those images of doubt and fear. You can focus on achieving your goal, visualizing it. When I say engaging all the senses, I especially mean the body's feel. That means your kinesthetic sense. What does it feel like to achieve that goal? And is it true fear or is it anxiety? So what you have to do is ask yourself and really drill that down with, well, what's the worst thing that can happen to me if I do this? Now, with Alex, it was very clear. If he does it and he fails, he falls and he kills himself. But when you feel, what is the worst thing that can happen if I do this and don't achieve it? Slow down and recognize the energetic pulse and your physical response to it. What's coming up in you that is making you so anxious? For a lot of people, it's succeeding. That fear of succeeding. What do I do now if I get that big job? What do I do now if I'm suddenly well enough to move and dance and run? What do I do with my life if I'm not the sick victim? So listen to yourself when you have anxiety about achieving something to see what comes up. And when you are carrying this out, taking those baby steps, always be decisive. Stay in the present moment, always. Focus on what you're doing, very much like Alex Honnold. He had to stay in the present. If he didn't, he would slip. And as he said, not being there 100% when he was climbing Half Dome made him, what happened was he nearly missed a jump where he had to do a kind of karate kick there too. And that was terrifying for him. And he wasn't filled with confidence. So that helped him learn how to carry out all of what I'm talking about now to overcome his fear. So you've also got to commit 100%. It's no good saying, yeah, I really want to do this, but I just have so much time and I've got to do other things in my life. And I really want a life-work balance and all of those things we tell ourselves to get us off the hook. If you want to get somewhere, if you want to achieve something, if you want to overcome your fear, you have to commit 100% to it. There's no other option. And finally, when you're afraid, slow down long enough to observe your thinking patterns. What is making me afraid? Ask that and drill down to try to find out. Most of the time, it is just an inchoate feeling of I'm going to fail. So you need to work on that, but you will be able to work on that by following these 7 key intentional steps. So remember, if you are thinking negatively all the time, I hate to tell you this, we all want to believe positive intention works better than negative intention. But the truth of it is, negative intention works just as well as positive intention. When they've done all kinds of studies, and I've detailed them in my book, The Intention Experiment, when they've done all kinds of studies with Qigong masters or even healers working in labs, when they've sent positive intention to plants, the plants grow taller. When they've sent negative intentions to plants, it stunts their growth. It works just as well. So those are the keys. And it's so important that you substitute the negative intention. You are beaming out there to the world. And by the way, it's not just the time you're doing intention in the morning. It's 24/7. Every one of those 70,000 thoughts is an intention, positive or negative. It's a thought that affects out there, that affects you, that is a broadcast to the world. So if you slow down long enough and try some of my 7 keys, you will start working toward achieving your goal. So I'm just about to ask questions. I also want to answer questions for my Intention Essentials course, because much of this and so much more is what I'm teaching in that class, which starts September 24th. And that's the URL. And it's also going to be in the chat. It's also going to be posted on Facebook too, for those of you who are listening live from Facebook. So it's an amazing course. Just to give you an idea about it before I take your questions, I have 7 sessions. 5 of them are teaching sessions where you learn all the rudimentaries. This is a level 1 course for people who have never taken a course from me, even those who have read my books, even if you've studied from other spiritual masters. It's also a great refresher course if you have taken stuff from me. And it's a wonderful preparation for my big, iconic, year-long Intention Masterclass, which starts in February 2023. This teaches you the right mind state, the right heart state, much more about mental rehearsal, how to word your intentions, how to overcome your own doubt and negativity, and much, much more. And it also enables you through live sessions to work with me in my mentoring session and work with the other class members. So you really nail it. You've got lots of homework, lots of exercises. You do experiential stuff right as you learn. And I also have a big Q&A session too. So 7 in all. Find out more about it, or I welcome questions about it and also about the 7 keys. So that's all I want to talk to you about. But now I'd love to answer your questions. So let me just stop this share. There I am. So we've got Molly and we have Laura. Laura is working on the chat and Molly is working on the Q&As. So if you have a question, we really prefer it if you put it in the Q&As, but we're also monitoring what you're writing in the chat. So my 2 fellow members of my organization will be helping us. So Molly, have we got any questions?
Yes, we do. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. So Sibylla asks, how can you map a route for healing from cancer or for repairing or creating a great relationship?
Those are great questions. Thank you. So mapping a route to healing from cancer is very simple. Number 1, intend to find the right practitioner. Somebody who is going to be positive, who is going to be your coach and cheerleader, not somebody who's going to say you have 4 months to live. If you have a practitioner like that, exit stage left and find a better person. So first you want to intend that. Then you want to intend for the right, the practitioner using the right approach. And then take it step by step. So let's say you are undergoing certain treatments. Let's say it's chemotherapy. You intend that that chemotherapy is going to kill that cancer with no side effects. Let's say they're using an alternative route. Well, you want to intend for the same thing. It's going to kill the cancer and heal you. And you intend for it step by step. In my Power of 8 group, we have somebody with stage 4 prostate cancer, and we've intended for his PSA to go down. We've intended for him to find the right practitioner. We've intended for when he had surgery for that to go well with no side effects, and on and on and on. So it's baby steps, taking it one step at a time. For healing a relationship, I would start with, say, focusing on, let's say you're arguing a lot. I don't know the details of your relationship, but let's say you're arguing a lot. So you intend for the arguments to stop and for both of you to really listen. And when you are with this person, send them healing intention, even while they're arguing with you. Listen to understand and share some real inner feelings. Be vulnerable. Believe it or not, that is the reverse of most people think you have to be powerful to fix something. Actually, being vulnerable is the better way, because people open up back. You open up, they open up. So those are just some of the ideas. I go into all of this in much more detail in my courses, but those will be some things to get you started. Okay, another question, Molly.
So Kevin asks if you've got any advice on mental rehearsal or visualization, as he has a hard time focusing on this part.
Okay, well, the first thing is visualization doesn't have to be visual. Remember, it can also be auditory. It can be kinesthetic. We all have different senses that are dominant. So some people visualize in their heads, some people see words, so other people hear things and really respond with that sense, with our hearing sense. Other people feel, they have a sense of space and they have a sense of kinesthetics, their feel. So go with what is more dominant in you and try visualizing one step at a time for just a few minutes. Don't try to do it in 20-minute chunks. Do it for a minute, then do it for 2 minutes and carry on like that. But the first stage is breaking it down to baby steps, as we talked about. Break down the route to manageable chunks, just like Alex Honnold did. and then visualize them in your head. And you can practice something else first. Let's say you bike ride or any kind of sport you do. You row or you run or you're a big walker. Imagine yourself riding your bike in your head. Just imagine it and try to feel what it feels like from your perspective. So it's as though you're doing it. Don't imagine yourself as a video. Don't look upon yourself as though you're watching a movie of yourself. Imagine it in your head as though you're doing it yourself. So you're on the bike and you're feeling it, and you're feeling your legs rotating, and you're feeling the resistance of the bike, and you're feeling going up a hill, all of those things. You're imagining it. So you could start by just doing something very simple like that, just to practice the art of mental rehearsal. And once again, always rehearse the tough parts most.
Great.
Okay.
We've got a question from Bridget. She asks, can you give me some advice on how to phrase an intention in a way that makes it more powerful?
Okay, so this is a whole course's worth of information I would have to give you, and it's exactly what I teach on my Intention Essentials class, the one that's starting September 24th. But I'm going to give you one very important piece of advice, and that is be specific. Everybody makes this mistake. Everybody thinks that what you need to do is say big, all-encompassing intentions, like I want to be rich and also have a really good relationship with my husband and be happy. That is not a specific intention. A specific intention is, my intention is that the pain I'm experiencing in the big toe of my right foot be immediately, completely, and permanently healed. That kind of specificity. Be specific. Don't intend for the whole blob all at one time. Focus on something very specific, one step at a time. Okay. We got any others?
Yeah, we've got Amit. He says, sometimes I'm going about my goal and suddenly a blanket descends on my mind and I'm unable to take any action. What do you think this is?
That is, Amit, thank you for sharing that. That is usually doubt, doubt and fear parading as something else. And so you are just blanketed with a shutdown and fear. So I would suggest going through the steps that I've talked about and learning more about intention to give yourself confidence. And also for everybody out there, I can't recommend anything more than a Power of 8 group. A Power of 8 group, I mean, there's some great evidence about the vagus nerve and how that is activated. That is the nerve that calms us down. It starts at our neck, it winds through all the major organs of our body, and it is involved when we feel compassion. It's involved when we are caring for our young, and it's also involved in calming us down and getting us into a wonderful, relaxed state. And one of the things that really turns on that vagus nerve is a group. And so a Power of 8 group, the way to get over that negativity and doubt, I can't recommend a Power of 8 group enough. And of course, we have them. We have on my community page, you can advertise to set up one in your time zone. If you join my community, it's completely free. We also have some steps to take. If you want to sign up, you're not on my website, if you haven't signed up, if you join my community and you get information and instruction from me, you get a video and a whole Power of 8 handbook. And of course, I teach you all the rudimentaries of how to run a Power of 8 group in Intention Essentials, my level 1 course that's coming up. Okay, and I'll check with, hey, Laura, have we got any questions in the chat? I think we are okay.
I don't think there's any in the chat, but we've got a few more in the Q&A.
Okay, let's hear it.
So Susan says, since negative intentions are just as powerful, how do you deal with others' negative intentions or beliefs about you?
Okay, once again, that there's a whole technique to that. There's not enough time to talk about it. I teach it in my classes. I teach how to create a strengthening element to you where you don't have to hide in a bubble. A lot of practitioners talking about intention talk about a mental bubble, just hiding yourself in a bubble or behind a wall. The studies have shown that doesn't really work, but there are many, many other techniques. I would say the key thing to talk about just in this class right now is holding on to your intention, focusing on that and ignoring the negativity around you. If you focus on your intention and you follow all of the things we're talking about with mental rehearsal, etc., you will be unstoppable. And remember, focus with the mindset that I started out this talk with. What if you couldn't fail? What if your life depended on you not failing? That is the approach I really recommend that you take to pretty much everything in your life, because that creates much more commitment. That creates you committing 100% and giving your all, which is really key too. Okay, any other questions? And thanks so much, everybody, for listening. I'm very excited to have this talk with you, and I'm thrilled to answer any questions that you may have. And Molly, I know Laura is going through the chat and also my Facebook page. And if you can check, I know Laura can write, can't speak on her computer, but if you have information from Facebook too on questions, I'm happy to take them.
We've got Pam who asks, she's a caregiver for her elderly mum who has many serious health issues, and she's always worried about her and fearful of her dying. How does she change this fear?
Well, first of all, I would try to focus on healing her. I would put, we have a choice in what we want to think about. We have a choice all the time. And instead of imagining and focusing on her dying, why did you focus on what can I do to help her have a better day? What can I do? What are my intentions for her healing? And start focusing on those intentions. And again, take baby steps. My intention today is that my mother eat more than she did yesterday. My intention today is that she walk a few steps when she's been unable to do so. My intention today, and so have an intention of the day, each day, that you focus on as much as possible. And instead of worrying all the time about her dying, intend also that you are going to enjoy every minute that you have with her. So if you turn it around instead of, oh my God, I only have 3 months more or something like that, or a year more, and I'm so terrified, what if she goes? If you focus your intention on, I'm going to give her these last years, months or years, whatever it is, that become some of the best times of her life. So intend each day to make her life a little bit better, a little bit more enjoyable, and focus on that. If you focus on her, I think it will be helpful. Also, again, I would recommend a Power of 8 group to help you get into that mindset and support so that you're not alone.
Got Donna asking, and she says, so when breaking down in bite-sized steps, at what point should she feel ready to move on to the next step in the visualization process?
Well, when you have mentally mastered it, look at what Alex did. Alex mentally mastered one step, going up that part of the rock. He knew, I know it now. Then he moved on to mentally working on the next move that he was going to make. It's the same way. You intend until you know it. Now, if you're going through a process, let's say, like our questioner who asked about, well, I'm battling cancer now. Well, you intend for the right practitioner. When you find the right practitioner, you intend for her using the most successful treatments. When they start working, you intend for the next thing. Or you can intend, you don't have to complete one thing. Let's say she's giving you medicine or she's giving you a treatment of some sort, and she wants to give you a test. Then you do an intention for a really successful outcome to that test, that you have low PSA count, for instance, that kind of thing. So whenever something comes up, you start intending and mentally rehearsing for that. Okay, Molly.
So we've got some more. Nancy asks, do you have any advice for turning off the mind and focusing, as when she attempts to send an intention and she has trouble staying on the topic?
Okay. Yeah. My big number one suggestion is find a Power of 8 group, because when you are doing intention in a group, it's extraordinary. And this is why I teach it in all of my classes. There are many reasons why a Power of 8 group works and supersizes intention. Number one, there's the power of your thoughts. Thoughts are things that not only affect you, but affect other things. Also, there is a group effect. As a French psychologist called Emile Durkheim put it, a group provides a collective effervescence. We all get energized and connected in a group. The third thing is the power of altruism. This is one of the most powerful aspects of all in group intention. When you look at the science of altruism, you see that it is like a bulletproof vest. People who live, who do altruistic things, no matter how minor, live longer, happier, healthier lives. Now, there's loads of things and evidence for this. Studies showing that even people with depression, praying for other people, they did better when they had depression and they were praying for somebody else with depression. This was a study run by a psychologist who was also a priest. He got together 400 people suffering from depression, divided them into two groups. One group got the prayer and the other group gave the prayer. And then the psychologist looked at how well they were all doing according to a whole bunch of psychological measures. And he found that the people who got the prayer were improved, but nowhere near as improved as the people who did the praying for them. So that and other evidence shows that when people with a certain illness help other people with that illness, they themselves get better. The helpers get better. And so much evidence like that. People helping other people heal themselves. It's a virtuous circle. It's not just a nice thing to do. In our human experience, it's a totally necessary thing to do. So there's altruism. But the other thing that really is healing for a Power of 8 group is the experience of ecstatic oneness. We don't get to experience this much in our lives. You know, you've probably heard this, you may have read my book, The Field, that we are all part of a quantum energy field. And many, many, many people say, we're all one. You know, that's a mantra among the spiritual community. But we don't experience life like that. We don't experience life as feeling like we're all one. We experience life as feeling separate, that I end with the hair on my skin, and that's where the rest of the world begins. But what we find is during Power of 8 sessions, I've done brainwave studies with a team of neuroscientists, and we found just using novice Power of 8 groups. So these were student volunteers from Life University, the biggest chiropractic university in the world and most prestigious. They put a team of neuroscientists at my disposal. So we got together 7 groups of volunteer students. We gave them some rudimentary practice in what to do with a Power of 8 group. We had them send intention in each group for one of the members of the group with a health challenge, while we put an EEG cap on one member of the group. An EEG cap measures brain waves, different kinds of the brain's brain waves. What we discovered was shocking to us. We expected we were going to see a brainwave signature almost identical to meditation. We didn't at all. We saw a brainwave signature almost identical to those conducted by the University of Pennsylvania on Buddhist monks doing ecstatic prayer and Sufi masters doing chanting, ecstatic chanting. What we found was a lowering of activity in the parts of the brain, like the parietal lobes. They sit right back here. They help us navigate through space. They tell us, this is me, this is not me. Well, they were dialed way down. And so were the parts of the brain, the right frontal lobes that were involved in worry, doubt, negativity. Those were also dialed way down. So what we had were a group of essentially novices in a state of ecstatic oneness. This was a brainwave signature, as I say, for very experienced Buddhist monks involved in ecstatic prayer. So that experience of oneness is the key piece, I believe, of a Power of 8 group and why it's so healing. We don't get to experience our natural state of oneness ever. We never get a chance to feel that. We only feel our aloneness, but suddenly you are part of a healing force. And as I said, in my work with thousands of people, I have found that not only the recipient gets healed, but the sender too. There's a mirror effect. It's an extraordinary effect. I've seen it on my intention experiments. Some 40% of people who get involved in every intention experiment I do, these are the big scale experiments when we're sending intention to lower violence somewhere or to do something like that, 40% report in surveys I send out afterward that some aspect of their life is healed. Mostly it is physical. People feel much better. Their illnesses are lessened. Many are cured, but also they heal their lives. They heal their relationships. They report that they're getting along better with their estranged husband or their not very nice boss. Or they also are talking about feeling more love for everyone they come in contact with. About half of the people who are involved in my intention experiments report that they feel more love for everyone they come in contact with. So there is this huge mirror effect with Power of 8 groups. So that long-winded answer to your question is probably the best way to overcome fear and doubt and also heal is to get yourself a Power of 8 group. And of course, I have my community. We also have intention experiments. They're always free. The community is free. And if you want to take a class with me and work with class members and create a Power of 8 group with them as well, we've got Intention Essentials, as I've said before, starting September 24th. And we're writing on the chat on Facebook how to get hold of it, how to find out more about what happens in that 7-part course. Okay, Molly, do we have any more questions?
We do. So Michelle asks, if you don't manifest your intention, might that be your soul's message to go in a different direction?
I think that's an interesting idea. If you don't manifest it, first of all, it doesn't work. It's not like clockwork that it works every time. Usually what I find is it works better in a group, more likely to manifest in a group, but there are many reasons why you might not be manifesting it. The most common in my experience is people aren't specific enough. As I say, they'll do an intention like, I want to be rich. And what does that mean to them? What does that look like? And do they need all that money? When they actually don't mean I want to be rich, they mean I want a new job, a new challenge, or I want more free time to be with my children or grandchildren, or I want more time to do my hobbies, not necessarily that they want to be rich. So being specific is my number one key that I would recommend that you try first before giving up and believing, well, this probably means I'm not supposed to achieve this. The other thing is breaking it down. Sometimes most people have when they try to do an intend for everything in their life to get fixed. Break it down into pieces and break those pieces into stages and see what happens.
So Alexandra asks, or she says, I know that emotions are important in intention, but I have a hard time in generating positive emotions. And when I do, it always seems so shallow. Do you have any advice or guidance on this?
Not quite sure what she means by shallow, but you mean, so she has negative emotions about people and things. Yeah, my number one recommendation would be to start monitoring your thoughts. Just start seeing what you're thinking most of the time, and you'll probably be shocked by how negative it is. And I would say it's Alex Honnold. Some of his ideas that he used while he was climbing the rock, and then my 7 keys, put them into effect. When you start focusing on what you need to achieve your goal, when you start breaking it down into steps, when you approach it, that your life depends on it, then those emotions start falling away. But it's about being in the present moment, essentially. So try to follow those keys and see what happens.
Teresa asks, I think this will be in your course, but she asks, should you keep repeating your intention in your head, maybe even throughout the day, or is it better to send out the intention and let it flow and go out?
Okay, well, yes, we talk about this in detail, Molly, in my course, Intention Essentials. And we also talk about in much more detail for my questioner from the one before, getting over negativity, alone and in the group. And a lot of that has to do with becoming much more conscious of what you're thinking. But there are ways to change those 70,000 thoughts that you have. And I can guarantee you that pretty much everybody on this call has mostly negative thoughts, that mostly what you're beaming out to the world, the majority of them are probably negative. So there are very clear ways to change that. And that's a lot of what I teach.
Perfect. And Donna asks, does it matter, or is there more value in being in a Power of 8 group with others having similar goals?
It absolutely doesn't matter, Donna. You can be in a Power of 8 group and have them have other goals. A real key piece, and I teach this in great detail in Intention Essentials, is getting off of yourself. If everybody's thinking the same, if everybody's focusing on the same, it doesn't get you off of yourself. But I have so many students who were focusing on something for themselves. It wasn't working. So they then, I told them essentially, get off of yourself. Start intending for someone else. They did, and whatever they needed or wanted manifested immediately. It was extraordinary. I'll give you an example of Lisa. Lisa is a bodywork practitioner, was desperate to publish a book on overcoming trauma with bodywork. Now, she had all of the techniques, but didn't know how to write a book. She'd worked with 3 editors and was getting nowhere. She was also terrified of marketing and didn't know how she was going to do that. So she was doing intentions for this. Her group was intending for her. She was getting nowhere. And I finally just said, Lisa, get off of yourself. Send an intention to somebody else in the group who is needy right now. So she did. She did an intention for Diane, who was really hard up for money. And she and the group were intending, really focused on Diane. Guess what happened to Lisa? The very next week, she's walking along her main street, and she gets this overwhelming urge to go into a shop. Now, she didn't need anything in that shop, but she just felt like, I have to go there. She goes in, she looks around, she doesn't even know why she's in the shop, and she sees somebody she recognizes. She remembered just an acquaintance she had met briefly. So they got chatting, and the woman asked her what she was doing now, and she said, well, I'm trying to write a book, etc. Turns out the woman is a former editor, now a book coach. When she hears what Lisa is doing, she says, I'd be happy to help you through the whole process. She helps her edit and complete the book. She helps her market it. Upshot of the story, it becomes an Amazon bestseller. So I've seen that multiple times. So the answer to your question about having people with all of the same idea, no. What seasons the group and helps it work better are different intentions and different needs that the group can address one by one.
Perfect. So an anonymous attendee has asked, how can we desensitize ourselves from doubt in relation to intentions?
Well, again, I go into this in big detail. I have a whole class on doubt and self-sabotage in my Intention Essentials class. I would say for the meantime, if you follow the 7 keys that I've just explained, they will really help you go a long way toward overcoming your own doubt. Remember a lot of your interpretation of things and going through this, and remember, this is going to be a recording. You can watch it again. You can look at the beginnings. You can look at some of those reasons that people have doubts, you know, and it's all about, I'm going to fail, I'm not ready, all of those things. Finding out why you have doubts would be my number one suggestion. Go through that exercise I had in the beginning of this talk and follow it yourself and try to analyze it out to see what's causing you so much doubt.
And one from Debbie, but again, I think this is answered in your course. She says, if intention is difficult for me, can I also write it or draw it?
If intention is difficult for you, do you write it or draw it? Well, again, I go back to the whole idea of a Power of 8 group. They're holding it for you. You're just opening up your heart to receive. So let's say your intention is to change your job. You will describe the job that you want. They will hold it for you. They will do all of the intending work, using all of the techniques I recommend. They will visualize you in that job. They'll do all of the steps that I've recommended and the ones I recommend in all of my courses, particularly Intention Essentials, and you will sit back and receive. And when you do intentions, you'll be doing them for other people. That's why it works so well, because you don't have to focus on yourself and deal with all your doubt and worry about how you phrase it, etc. The group does it for you.
Perfect. So I think a final one would be from Khalid, who just said, what do you mean, just can you recap on what you mean by breaking it down?
Sorry?
Khalid just says, what do you mean by breaking it down?
What do I mean by breaking it down? Well, I mentioned if you listen to this recording, you'll hear how I explained it earlier. I explained it with somebody who had cancer, saying, well, first you intend for finding the right practitioner. Then you intend for the practitioner making the right diagnosis. Then you intend for the practitioner finding the optimum treatment to give you. Then you intend for the first test you get to come out showing improvement. Then you intend for the next test showing improvement. If you need surgery, you intend that it all goes well with no side effects. And with each treatment, you always intend that you will have no side effects and it will help you heal. So apply that to the same thing. let's say you're trying to get a new job. You intend for finding the right way to go about finding a job for you. Is it a recruitment agency, or is it an ad online, or is it LinkedIn? Then you intend that you get an interview. Then you intend the interview goes well. Then you intend they offer you a job, and it's for everything that with all of the benefits and everything that you really want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you just carry on like that, step by step. And again, I teach a great deal more in my Intention Essentials class. So we've got lots of information about it on my website. Do check it out. Just find out more if you want to study with me and find out all of the right techniques. I teach actually 7 keys to intention mastery. So those are the 7 intention essential keys to really doing it right from the start. It's a level 1 class. It's best for people who haven't studied with me before, or who may have read my books or studied with other spiritual leaders, but haven't done intention with me before. So I recommend have a look at it, find out if this is for you. And please also check out my website. So lynnmctaggart.com has some free tools. You'll see my 5 levels of classes. I have many classes that I'll be running through the year. I have many resources for all budgets. I want to reach everybody, no matter how rich or poor you are. There's material there for you. So do check out my website, lynnmctaggart.com. And I really want to end this by thanking my team, Molly and Laura, thanking all of you for showing up, and just leaving you on a high note. Just understand that fear is something we don't have to live with day by day. Uncertainty isn't a terrible affliction. Uncertainty also can mean improvement. And we've watched as our life, as we know it, is crumbling down. But I am of the firm belief that what's breaking down is also breaking through. And what's breaking through is going to be a massive improvement. So it's going to be a bumpy ride for a while, so fasten your seatbelts. But do expect that the human ingenuity that we have, the crises that we've faced are very similar to crises that have been faced before. There was a major pandemic, believe it or not, right before the Renaissance. There was a crumbling of the old way, the Middle Ages, and a way of being, a way of doing that made way for this extraordinary flowering of human thinking, human achievement, which was the Renaissance. And it changed the way life was forever. I think we are in the same sort of jump time, as Jean Houston calls it, my dear friend, jump time, a time of change and evolution. So it's all going to get better from here. Thank you so much for listening. Watch this again. If you want to know more about my 7 keys, check out my website, lynnmctaggart.com. Check out my course, Intention Essentials, and I hope to see you there. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.